Hello, everybody. We're here for another episode of Martial Praxis. This time, we're going to be discussing Aikido and how it can be used to benefit various populations. I'm joined here by Kim Gold and the Dojo Cho Steve of Scarsdale Aikido. Is that correct?
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
I mean,
Really excited to have you
New
guys
York,
on the podcast.
the New York
Thanks for doing
Aiki
this.
Dojo,
What'd you say?
the New York Aiki Shirin Dojo.
Got it. New York Aiki Shurin Dojo.
Say it like that.
And so that's if people want to find you, the easiest way is they can go on Google and look up like Scarsdale Aikido or
Yeah,
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 Aikido, even in Westchester, you'll probably come up.
yeah,
yeah.
for sure.
Awesome. Can you maybe tell us just like a little bit about your background with Aikido and kind of how you got into it and how how it became a big part of your life?
You
Yeah,
want to
sure.
start, Ken?
Yeah, I'll go first. I started training about 20 years ago on January of 2006, and it kind of arose from I was doing Zen meditation at the time. For a few years, I had been studying Zen and meditating, and Zen is pretty austere, and you sit. That's all you do is sit, and I just found myself asking, isn't there some way I could have like a moving meditation, something where, I wasn't just sitting. And somebody said, why don't you look into Aikido? And I had never even heard of Aikido. And at that time, I was like 38 years old. I had two little kids. I did not envision myself a martial artist, or even wanted to try martial arts. And I said, Aikido, that's interesting. And I, went online and I found Scarsdale Aikido. And I was like, this is it. I became like addicted to it almost instantly. I went to like every class that was available. I even dragged my kids with me. And, it did what it said. It was and is moving meditation. It's a way of doing the exact same thing that you're doing in like a meditative, class like Zen, but you're doing it in a martial setting. So
Yeah.
And did you find that correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds almost like in some ways it kind of replaced the Zen practice and it was a little bit of a better fit for you, or did you kind of do them together at the same time?
for a while I did them together, and then it did kind of replace the Zen practice. And I think at the time Steve was also practicing Zen
Yeah, yeah,
Buddhism at the time too. But
yeah.
eventually, yeah, that just trailed off, and I stopped doing sitting meditation in that way, and I just focused only on Aikido. Mhm.
Yeah, I think it's interesting how like certain modalities of like what we're looking for is, let's say, meditation or feeling like that flow state and feeling connected to ourselves, that different modalities are just going to work so much better for different people. And like it can be hard sometimes to admit that to yourself. You really want to be that person who can just sit there on the cushion. And of course, if you keep trying, you probably will develop that skill, but we all have our natural tendencies and maybe, you find it so much easier, in a moving practice.
I did, and it was like a world opened up to me. That was really what happened. It was like just this whole world of the aikido philosophy and the techniques and the movements and the weapons and the camaraderie and the philosophy. It was like I just really took to it right away. And Steve, of course, has been doing aikido like triple the time that I had.
Yeah,
Not,
maybe I'm
not,
curious about your experience as well. Maybe you could share it with us.
yeah, I started actually. I was wrestling when I was 12 and through high school, and I was realizing that this isn't going to work for my body when I'm a little old man, and
Mhm.
I would have to think about becoming an adult and how I want to enter the adult world. I started doing a little bit of research on martial arts, and I saw a book on Aikido, and I looked at it. I was like, that's exactly what I want to learn. A lot about the breathing and the timing and stuff like that. And that's where I want to explore. I wasn't into wrestling, just into muscle. I was really more interested in the mental components of it. So I was reading about Aikido and I'm like, okay, but where do you find this stuff? And the dojo opened up like a few miles from where I lived right at the time. And at the time, this was in 1978. So there were not a lot of dojos in the state. I was in Florida. There were not a lot of dojos in the state of Florida. One opened up a few miles from me. I was like, okay, there we go. And I started
Wow.
training, and it did pretty much what I was looking for in my life. But needed to come to a better understanding of what was being taught, because they didn't really explain things as explicitly in Aikido. So I could just do the techniques and
Yeah.
figure it out. So I started practicing Zen,
Mm.
Chinese Zen. Um,
Chan.
yeah, China. Yeah. And that really was like an infusion, like, wow, this, the whole infrastructure started to make sense. And it became a good operating foundation or operating system, so to speak, for life.
Yeah.
And when I started to, combine the two practices, my growth just went up much faster, and to much more. It was much more interesting to me. So I've
Yeah.
continued to train both meditation and Aikido, and that's so I keep learning basically.
No, I definitely think that, meditation practice is like a supercharger for martial arts. I mean, I've practiced Tibetan Buddhism for a long time.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I really feel like I think there's a Tai Chi teacher who explains it a lot better than I can, but he kind of basically says that, like, what you're looking for in these internal martial arts is you basically need awareness and then relaxation and some kind of structure, and that awareness and the relaxation is exactly what you're training in meditation. It's
Mhm.
like you have a way to just work on it directly in
Right.
an even calmer environment, right? Like it's even lower pressure than, when you're moving with a partner.
Mhm.
Right.
So I think that becomes a really good platform to develop those mental qualities that
Right.
then really make your martial arts practice go so much smoother and faster, and can get over a lot of the humps that people otherwise have. I also think the philosophy is important too.
Right.
Yeah, because I know that in at least the way that we are in Iwama style Aikido, and
Hmm.
it's very much focused on like a methodical, systematized, very physical way of learning. And there's not actually a lot of philosophy that's overtly taught in Iwama style Aikido, almost none.
Yeah.
you
Saito
know,
Sensei is very simple. It's like
yeah,
this bad, do that.
yeah. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but it's there because you could feel it in the art. You can actually feel it. Something's happening on a very, deep level. So when you look into the meditative traditions, whichever one you happen to pick, any profound tradition, then you get explicitly what the techniques are kind of saying
Yeah.
implicitly.
Do you think maybe that is because it's important for the wisdom and the knowledge to be embodied? Like, you need to experience it somatically first, and then once you have a real experience of it, then you can actually like maybe philosophize a little bit about it.
Totally. I think, and I think many people get all the benefits without ever having this explicit philosophy taught. In fact, many of the people that I train with, they really just come to class to learn the techniques and self-defense and fitness and all that. So it does get embodied, and I think it is really important. It's maybe almost more important for it to be embodied than for it to be conceptual, because conceptual, that doesn't necessarily change your life to the point where you're going to be a more peaceful person in the world, and you're going to be, interacting with people differently.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. It needs to really change who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I just out of my own curiosity, when I lived in Florida, I actually got to train, like I had a friend who was like maybe a Sandan or a Nidan in Iwama, and he was actually like a Uchideshi down there, but like he would learn Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu from me, and then he would teach me Aikido, so we like hung out a little bit, and I did some Iwama, but I'm just curious, from your perspective, being like, in the school, like what sets the Iwama style apart from others, like I just out of my own curiosity, because you have like Aikikai and
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
Key Society and quite a few other
yeah,
approaches. I know Iwama does more with the weapons, if I'm correct.
a
yeah,
lot.
yeah.
Yeah, you can
So
explain that.
when you were in Florida, he was maybe Uchideshi with Stephanie Yak, I would think.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I got to train with her once or twice.
yeah. So Owama style, it really uses the kata system of learning. The techniques are taught first as a two-man kata. We call it static practice. Once you really understand the body mechanics and the static practice, then you start to speed it up. In the
Hmm.
Aikikai, and I trained in both. The Aikikai, you're doing everything in motion in the beginning, and you have to backtrack
Ah,
to figure out all the other stuff. But in the
Yes.
Dharma system, it's the kata system of movement. And you really, what the way Saito Sensei put it was, if you're sitting there dancing all over the place, somebody suddenly grabs a hold of you and you can't move, you're not studying a martial art.
So you're starting with a static grab.
Right. Static grab,
Got it.
guys move,
Very interesting.
Very
you
strong
throw. Yeah,
grab,
yeah.
like
So it's
yeah.
it's a physical, and from the physical you get back to the mental. So that sort of approach.
It
And the
makes
weapon
perfect sense.
system, as you alluded to, that came directly from the founder. With the other styles, it's not the founder's persistent system. It's a little bit of the founder. They merged it with other things that they did and stuff like that. So,
I get exactly what you're saying.
yeah,
It's interesting because there's so many different variations of what you see represented as Aikido. But the thing you say about the grab is interesting because it's similar to what I've seen in Daito Ryu. They do both, right? They're interested both in the static grab and also in it being in motion. But different teachers like Koto Horikawa would specialize in the static grab. So if you see people grab him, he's like completely still, and people grab him and he'll throw them off. But then like Okamoto, he had more timing, so it would happen like in motion. You'd see the person grab him and he's moving slightly. But
right,
in both Daitoru and Tamiki, we do emphasize the static grab and practicing from the static grab, which makes me think that it probably is, as you said, more closely tied to what O-sensei was teaching and doing.
right. I think so. Saito Sensei, they found a book. Everybody used to complain about him changing it. And they found a book that the founder did, 1938 book called Budo. And in his last years, he would go to a seminar. I would see him at seminars, and he's pointing to the book. He's like, "See, this is what I've been teaching you. It's in his book."
Hmm.
So that's all he's like. See, he's looking for credit.
So, what was like the aha moment where you guys realized you were like, "Hey, like, we could take what we've been doing with Aikido and use this to benefit, people or children who have, serious and significant limitations."
Yeah, that came like incrementally when I started, like in the early years of my training, I started helping out in the children's program, and we would get a lot of calls for younger kids. Like
Hmm.
if the culture in our area is everyone starts to sign their kids up for activities when they're 3 or 4,
Yep.
and then by the time they're like school age, they're already doing sports. So
Yes.
there's this window of time, and the consensus in Aikido at the time was that we don't really start teaching kids until like
6 or 7.
9. I thought it was
Yeah.
Oh,
even
it's more like
older.
6 or 7.
Yeah, it was a lot older than we were getting, right? And my kids were also young, and I wanted them to learn. So I thought, why can't we teach Aikido to like a 4-year-old? I can see why you can't teach it to a 3-year-old, when they're
Yeah.
little, but like a 4-year-old, maybe we can do that. Like maybe there's a way. So I kind of studied it. I was at the time I was in graduate school, and I was actually studying special education, and I was studying how to teach to different learners. So how to take one topic and and teach it to like all these different learners, and I thought, why can't we do that in Aikido? And maybe we can teach 4-year-olds. And I made a program. Like I created a program,
Right.
without without watering it down. Like you don't want to turn your Aikido class into just like a fun and game
Absolutely.
gymnasium class. So
Yeah.
we did not want to do that. We wanted it to be an actual Aikido class. So we really focused on the principles, and sort of simplifying, like these are the principles that we want to teach, and these are the techniques that we're going to use. And you have to use play, not because you're turning your class into fun and games, but because that's the language that kids learn in, right?
Yeah.
So the games that we used and developed were designed, like we have almost like a randori game and a concentration game and a focusing game. um,
Was just out of curiosity because in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu we've had this big movement really recently of basically ecological dynamic psychology coming in, and we no longer are instructing the art as techniques, but instead like in the form of games. So like you have these constraint, it's called like constraints-led approach, and they have these games that basically give you the same task objectives that the techniques are built around. So I'm wondering, if were you exposed to any of that type of research? No, it wasn't anything like that because it sounds like almost exactly like what you were doing.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, but back then, this was like 18 years ago or so, or
Yeah.
18
Yeah,
years
I
ago.
don't think it
So
existed then.
I did not know that then. But we did like we also shortened the class, so we made it like 30-minute class, and we would start out with some warm ups to kind of get their energy out. Then we do a technique, one or two, right, where we
Right.
would keep the integrity of the technique. We just wouldn't pick the most complicated technique,
Yeah.
Ikkyo or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and then we would move on to game, like, but it was like a game mimicking a multiple attack. So we would have them do something we call push tag, or we had this big giant ball, like this big ball that we would roll, and they'd have to dodge out of the way of it.
Yes. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I actually played that exact game with my
yeah, it's a fun
3-year-old. We call it
game.
ninja bowling.
Yeah, yeah. So we did
Yeah.
that, and then the next question was, we would get phone calls for people. They'd say, "Oh, my son's on the spectrum, or has ADHD, or whatever." They would sort of bring a diagnosis with them. Although we don't like classify people by their diagnosis, but parents would come like that, and we just thought, we've already adapted the Aikido to an age group that they told us we couldn't adapt it to, and it was
Yeah.
working really well. So why not? So we just basically, it started one kid at a time, and we just,
Yeah. We got up to about 4 kids, and there were 4 of us, teaching them hands-on.
yeah, it was very intensive for instructors because we wanted to make sure that they had enough, we had enough people,
Yeah.
helping them out. But
On the games front, I brought my son, he was in high school, into the program. He was doing Aikido he went through the kids program and the adult program, and he came in to help out. And what we did is for his college research, for his college prep, we sent him over to a place where the person was a meditation teacher, but also a scientist. And we said,
Huh.
he had done some research about on autism specifically. And he went to her and said, what ideas do you have? And what she talked about was just sort of the cycle of stress. When these children they grow up in a home where their parents are terrified, they don't know about their future, and they look up and they go like, oh my God, I can't keep up with everybody else, and they have this sort of gut level terror, and that they lose the ability to learn. So
Yeah.
the idea is to reverse it, to build confidence. So then they become more relaxed. They can learn. They're like, oh, I can build more confidence.
mhm.
And what we did then with the games was, my son was tasked with developing with other people, creating games to deal with sensory integration issues and some other issues. So we would come up with games that would help them take, say, sensory integration and put it together with Aikido principles and stuff like that, and teach the kids through that.
And they would
So
relax.
that was part of how
Yeah.
we designed it.
Yeah.
So
Taking the stress level off and
Yeah.
making it fun and sort of like taking them out of like one thing we've noticed is a lot of kids who come in with these diagnoses, they have a lot of services in their life. So they go from one structured OT to
Yes.
this,
OT to PT to,
so many.
yes.
Yeah, so many. And and that's all well and good and everything, but we didn't want our space to be like another service,
Yeah.
another thing that they had to do to fix them. So we tried to make it more like normal, like it is normal. I mean, they are, they're human beings. We're all human beings. We
Yes.
all
Yes.
have
Yes.
our
Yes.
own adaptive thing that, we're working through. So the way that we see it is, from an Aikido philosophy perspective, it's not like, oh, we have to fix this person with this diagnosis by using these games or these techniques. We look at it from the Aikido's perspective, which is everybody needs to be rebalanced in a way. Like
Yeah.
we're all not properly balanced in modern life, or so we all have to come to the training dojo to put ourselves together in the right way, and
Yeah.
find that balance and that center and that peace. So we just look at it as, well, this is just what we're doing with everybody, really. It's just that we have to be a little bit more specific.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes perfect sense. I also think it's interesting, like for both the average student of martial arts, but also especially in the case of, say, you have a child with some disability or even just like a non-diagnosed challenge, like they have trouble focusing, that everybody's always so interested in the results. And they like really want to get somewhere with it, and there's always this like result-oriented mindset that's brought to it. And the the place where I often see people have the most benefit and also enjoy themselves the most is where they're just kind of like doing it and having fun. And a
Yeah.
lot of times, especially when I have kids who have challenges like special needs, that you know they have a private lesson or whatever, and I know that their parents want to see results long term, and I think that they're going to get there, but that sometimes really what they need is to like decompress and have fun.
Yeah.
You know, like I've seen, it's so funny. I saw this thing where these people in Russia, they do like this Sistema martial art, but then on the side they have this sword dancing. So they like spin these swords around, and it's a
Right.
whole dance that they do, but they're incredibly coordinated. And I was watching them have these little kids swing sticks around, and I thought, man, like when I was a little kid, I used to do that, and everybody used to tell me to stop. And I thought, what if I just give one of these little kids like a shiai, but like a wakizashi, like a short one. And I just tell them like you can't hit anything and you can't throw it or drop it, but just swing this and do whatever you want. And
Yeah.
I have these kids do it, and it's amazing what happens to their coordination. All of a sudden, they're shifting their weight and they're doing all these things that I couldn't possibly train them to do. And the other thing that's very funny about it is it takes them a long time to realize that they're really allowed to swing the stick however they want. You know, like there's a lot of me going, no, 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 like you could swing it faster if you want. They're like, really? So I think sometimes we're so focused on the result that we miss out on the process. And I wonder if you guys have found something similar, and if that's sort of a part of the like what you talk about with the when you say like Aikido principles, is that sort of included in there in any way?
Well,
Yeah.
I think, we have sometimes we take people into our programs that go into the adult because they're a little bit older. And one of the things we found across the board is by not treating people like you have this illness or you have this condition,
Yeah.
they break out and they're like, wait a minute, I'm just treated like everybody else here, and I could just I just learn at my own pace, and it's very I think very freeing for them, so that they sort of come to themselves and they sort of develop more confidence and they develop a lot more focused ability to do stuff. And I think a lot of the benefit they get is because we don't put them in a bucket, and we give
Yeah.
them the freedom to sort of develop their own way.
And the process oriented learning is like that. I'm like all about that, because I think it's almost like talking about balance. It's like our culture is product oriented, results oriented, quantitative, like making sure you can graph everything and, whatever. But I think that we can provide more of a process oriented learning where it's like, this is a valid way of learning. It's a valid way of being. And if you can have this space in the dojo when you walk in and you are allowed to learn the art in a way that is completely organic with you as a person,
Yeah.
it's you. You're organically learning the art because the principle of Aikido would not be to impose something on someone, but to make them be the human that they are, in the full sense. So
Yeah, I had a young boy, and I was trying to show him just a Joe kata, a 6 step Joe kata, or something like that. And his father came in and was just sort of watching, and he was like really cheering him on when he just did anything. And I was looking like, dude, you have no idea. And after about 45 minutes, I got to the point where we could do the full kata, in, up, spin, all this stuff, plus some sabori basic exercises to go into it. And at the end, the father was like, what just happened? He just learned a normal amount that a kid would learn, any kid would learn. And because the only thing I was doing is I was looking at the child and I was just trying to figure out, like, in order to learn, they need this. In order to
Yeah.
learn their processes to do this, what do they need to learn rather than, okay, here's the curriculum that you do it. And so when I did that, they learned very quickly, just like a normal kid. They just learned differently. The process was different, but they learned just as well.
right, and the standards are not lowered. You know what I'm saying? Like, in
Yeah.
fact,
Yeah.
it exceeded the standards that this
Yeah.
thought that he would exceed.
Totally.
You know,
No, that's one of the things I find also with working with just different people is that like honestly, like from my perspective as the teacher, so many people are so hard on themselves and so like negative about their own positive, like wonderful qualities. Like everybody has these like inherent things that are like really valuable martially.
hmm
And people tend to be, oh, I'm just flexible, or I'm just strong, or I'm just that. I'm like, no, no, this is like a precious, wish for, like in Tibetan Buddhism, we say, this is a wish fulfilling jewel. Like you have this thing,
Yeah.
you should use it, like, so I think a lot of times people don't realize that even when it comes to kids who have special needs, some of them have amazing abilities. I have this one kid I work with, and one day out of nowhere, he started telling me all about black holes and quasars, and I'm like, he's like 5, and like has all these different focus issues, and all of a sudden I'm just like, wow, like I never would have thought that he like has a college level understanding of cosmology and astronomy, you know?
Building computers, and you're like, what?
Yeah, yeah, no, it's really incredible. You said something earlier about kind of like just to summarize it, sort of like how making a safe space so that people can practice at their own pace. And something that I've really struggled with specifically in traditional martial arts. Like I do a lot of combat sports and I also do a lot of traditional martial arts, but when I'm in the traditional martial arts spaces as well as meditation and yoga and healing, one of the things that I really see a lot and I struggle with is the subtle forms of competition, right? Like we
Mhm.
don't have the overt forms of competition that we get in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, where it's like, I walk into the gym and everybody knows I can beat them up and I kind of look at them and it's very like alpha manly, what do you call it? Like a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie, But then when you go to traditional martial arts, a lot of times in a little bit more of like toxic environments, you see this like really nasty jockeying for pole position, and everybody's always subtly competing with each other and trying to impress the teacher or be superior to the other. It sounds like you have a really, like, from what you said, that you have a really good way of kind of cultivating a space that doesn't allow for that. Could you kind of speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, we do have a great dojo. I have to say, all the students are great. It is a really good place and a very laid back place. And what you're saying is correct because it's just human nature.
Yeah.
I mean, no sensei created an art that did not have competition, but that doesn't mean that humans don't seek competition. And the thing that we've noticed is that in the way that we teach the adaptive martial arts, especially when we bring like teenagers or people who are old enough to come into the adult class, sometimes people have a certain idea of the way that serious training is supposed to take place. We're
Mm.
supposed to be quiet. We're supposed to not laugh. We're not supposed to have a side conversation on the mat or something like that. And, those are not bad things to aspire to, but
They are assumptions ultimately, though.
what's that?
They're assumptions. Because, like, I've been with all different high level people in all different arts, and some of them are really serious and they'll beat you if you talk, and others, like, are chatty Cathys and will tell you when you get there if you're tired to go get coffee and come back in 10 minutes, like,
You have to be flexible with the person who's learning, right?
yeah,
So that's the challenge that we've had, when we've integrated the adaptive martial arts with our adult classes is the adults have a certain maybe idea that, well, you're not supposed to be having a conversation while you're doing the technique. But in fact, if I'm working with a particular person, that conversation is what they actually need to have
yeah,
to
yeah,
relax
yeah.
and to just have fun in the class. So it's not like I'm being disrespectful of the conversation. It's a different way of teaching.
Yes.
So that assumption
That's
is,
blending with the person and
yeah.
responding to
I
certain.
was just gonna ask about that because when you're talking about how you teach like the student and how you adapted the Aikido, it sounds very much parallel to how you use Aikido martially, when you're practicing it. That it's essentially the same thing, just
Yeah,
applied to a slightly different dimension of like being, basically, like.
yeah.
So that is kind of the idea with what you're doing, that it's just Aiki and you're just blending and harmonizing with the person. If that takes the form of a conversation or some kind of nonverbal communication or just practicing, that you're trying to, as the like uke for that person, you're trying to give them what they need, so to speak, so they can have a positive experience.
Yeah, and it's once you sort of know that principle, you can be fluid with it, right? So that person, that very same person, on another day might need you to tell them, we're here to train. We're just
Yeah.
we're just gonna
it
focus, you
does
know.
it does create things where other people are like, why are they talking so much? And what does it mean about the dojo? I'm like, well, it means that we're practicing properly. We're helping this person the way that they need it. So, allow it and don't look at it like it's a negative. Look at it like this is what we need to do to help this person. So,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah, it's moment by moment. I mean, it's like what we were saying about, Zen and meditative arts. It's like, it's what does this moment require? And from a self-defense perspective, it's the same way. Like you wouldn't go into a hopefully you wouldn't go into a self-defense situation with the preconceived notion of what it's going to be like or what you're going to do, because that will cloud your natural ability to respond in proper way.
Yeah.
So that's sort of the principle behind that, I think.
yeah.
Is, moment
Could
to
you,
moment.
that makes perfect sense. No, I think that's also one of the hardest things in martial arts is going from the forms of the techniques and the explicit step-by-step instruction to then learning how to sort of like improvise and deal with situations on the fly without being hindered by those forms that you previously learned.
Mhm.
That transition I think for most students is especially difficult.
Iwama style, I trained the Aikikai, and you know, there it's like, okay, you want a 180-degree turn here, and you want to go 3/8 off there, and you have a sort of general idea about the angles, but it's all just fluid and moving and moving and moving.
Yeah.
Iwama style, it's strict, it's kata form. So when you go from kata form to in motion in the Iwama style, it's a little bit because you spend, I mean, the way the founder taught originally is that you spend 10 years doing static practice, the kata form, before
Yeah.
you started doing movement. We're not quite that bad.
Yes.
I just loosened it up, and you're getting some exposure to it early on, but you're not really tested on that until like Nidan Sandan is when it really starts to come out. So transitioning so Kim started. The dojo went from an Aikikai dojo. Sugano Sensei was my teacher, and then we switched over to a Wama system, and so she had the flowing stuff in there. So when she had to bridge the gap, she's like, "Oh, okay, now I just go back and I do this flowing." But the other
Um,
guys that didn't start that way, it's a fair amount of work to be able to like cross that bridge. They
It's
really
kind of cool, like, even though obviously in many ways so many of the styles are deviations from what was originally taught, that
right.
kind of like we were saying earlier about people, that they all have their own, kind of like strengths, like the Aikikai, their movement and their ability to do that like, circular movement and the blending is just really it looks so beautiful, and whenever I watch them, I was like, oh wow, that is just so pretty. Like I can't remember his name, like Ryuji Shirakawa. I I spend hours just watching this guy. Like I'll buy his DVDs. They're in Japanese. I don't even know what he's saying. I'm just like looking at him do the moves.
Yeah, it's beautiful and fun. I remember those days when we did it. It was
Yeah.
like, oh wow.
There's a lot of subtlety
Yeah.
in it. As she was saying, moment to moment, you have to look and see how they're attacking and make microscopic adjustments and to deal with it. But the Iwama style, the risk is, you do only that kind of training, and then you don't really get your foundation, and then when somebody challenges you, you get stuck, and that's Iwama style is built to prevent that.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. So, when it comes to like the principles that you talk about with Aikido, do you think you could talk a little bit about what some of those are? I'm just curious because you kind of get different things from different people when it comes to this. I mean, you'd hope that it would be standard, but like, what are the ones that are the most important to you, or maybe the ones that were the most challenging for you to actually do? Like, for me personally, it's in Aikido and it's in other arts, but like I just have this crazy problem with my eyes where like I'll just be fighting someone and absolutely beating the pants off of them, but just looking at the floor. They're like, why won't you look at people?
That's interesting. How do you see what they're doing?
Yeah, I don't know. I know I usually have some point of contact with them and I can feel their body from that. Or like it's just like most people, their intent is kind of obvious.
Yeah.
Like they're kind of like they're gonna do like one of five different things and it's pretty
Right.
limited.
Right.
What's a principle? I mean, there's just, I mean, that's sort of how we started, the adaptive program was working from principle outward.
Yeah.
So, there's just so many. I mean, I think one of the most important ones that we do in Awama style is being grounded, centered, and, almost like just being like heavy, like you're rooted and
Yeah.
grounded into the ground. And you do that by paying very close attention to your posture and the alignment of your body so that everything is connected. So, I mean, that principle I think is
That's very good
the
for
most
kids in
important thing.
particular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For just if you're on the spectrum or you're not, if you're just a kid and somebody's trying to pick a fight with you and you're solid, and suddenly the guy just says, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Or the grounding is very important for children that are trying to stabilize themselves. So
Yeah,
that's really
totally.
helpful.
Yeah, that's like, I mean, in our Awama classes, we start the class out with an exercise called Tai no Henko,
Yeah.
and that's basically, that's something that the gross movements of that anyone can do. They're very simple to teach, but the principle that you're learning in that is strong hips and alignment and posture. And
Yeah.
I think that's actually good on so many fronts for everyone, but when you get that posture and you become rooted in your body, you're inhabiting your body, and you sort of project that outward
Yeah.
to others. So that's a
Absolutely.
self-defense move right there, is that you are not, you are there, your head is not in the clouds, you're not up in the air, your body is grounded.
Yeah, no, people are, I think for self-defense, one of the thing that really changed my thinking was to think like a criminal. If you like really want to understand self-defense, you kind of have to think a little bit like how a criminal would think. And you have to understand, hey, you know,
Hmm.
if I'm gonna rob somebody or kidnap them, I'm looking for someone who's not paying attention, who's
Hmm.
isolated, who's weak, feeble. Like you're looking for that person who portrays and kind of gives off those qualities and puts themselves in a precarious situation. So just by not being that person and not giving that off, you're already, in most cases, gonna deselect yourself as a potential victim.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So that principle and patience is like super, super important.
I think martial arts is really powerful, like of all things, like, like meditation is good too, but I think martial arts is huge for developing patience. And
Yeah.
especially if you teach kids martial arts, that's like, the accelerator if you want the crash course in patience.
Yeah, I know. I know. And
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like nobody even talks about patience in our culture anymore. It's like it used to be this big virtue, and now it's like you never really hear anyone say, like, hey, we need to work on patience. I think because you don't need patience to operate in modern culture. You can have everything instantaneously.
Yeah.
So it's like you can't have martial arts training instantaneously. It takes you just have to keep showing up even when you don't feel like it.
I
And
think also so many things in our culture we can pick up and put down, right? And
yeah.
martial arts also isn't like that either. You have to be continuous.
It's to
Yeah.
be continuous, and you have to, much of the time you're going to do it, you're not going to want to do it. You're going to want to leave class or sit down or, tune out or whatever. So, teaching them patience is very like countercultural, but I think it's a really deep virtue and principle to learn.
When you work with the grounding, you mostly do it from like a grab? Like I know Taino Henko is off of a wrist grab typically, right? Um,
Yeah. Well, we'll start out with the legs, power into the
But they
legs.
grab the wrist, right?
Then they grab well, it really could be anything, but that the grounding is coming and you're going to learn it first just by yourself. Then
Right.
you learn it with weapons. And then the first one to develop strong hips would be Taino Hanko. But it's in every technique. You
mm,
start out by powering into your legs. You're retraining the lower back to flatten and just drill in.
yes.
So you can move and you can stop and go and stuff. So they're really very specific. I mean, I studied in the Aikikai and my teacher was very grounded, but
Yeah.
you aren't going to learn it from him because he never talked about it.
Yeah, I find that is a big problem in Aikido is that you have teachers who are very high level and they have some really amazing skills and they don't always have a systematic way to teach you that skill that they've
Mm.
achieved.
Right,
Yeah.
right. So that comes out first. But yeah, so then once you get the grounding, you'll go off of a wrist grab, and then you have contact with somebody, and if you're not grounded, you'll feel it, and then you
Yeah.
have to learn how against resistance to reconnect with the ground and pull the technique off.
It's funny that you guys bring that up because one of the things I've been doing with almost all my students, adult, like from all levels, is just pushing on them, like
Mhm.
having them get into a stance and I think it's a prerequisite for this. Like people have to feel pretty safe with you. Like if they think you're gonna like slam them or hurt them or do something crazy. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But I was just pushing on my students really gently to try to get them to learn how to just take the force and ground it.
Yeah,
And
we do
really
that.
not
Yeah.
even a lot, but it's interesting too, especially with the kids who are special needs. I think that the physical contact is like it's like really like grounding for them, like in the other sense of the word.
Very
Right.
much.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
strong grabs, many kids have found that very calming. And I think there's a biological explanation for that. I think there's been some research in that, but
Yeah, like the pressure stuff.
yeah, and some kids use like weighted blankets and different things like that in their home life, but
I would
you
think
know,
Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is a
yeah,
method that could take advantage
sure.
of that. I don't
Yeah.
know that
Probably
much.
a little excessive.
Okay.
Like, like therapeutic and too much pressure.
Okay. All right. I don't know what to
That's
say.
funny. Yeah.
No, it's a valid point. I think honestly for adults, that is very much the case, right? Like it's that deep sensory input, right? Like your entire body is pushing on somebody and you're kind of like fighting with all of your strength against someone and you're wrestling in that fashion. I definitely think that for adults and for a lot of people it fulfills that need. But then on the flip side, it can become like absolutely panic inducing and terrifying. You have like one too many cups of coffee and then you get trapped underneath somebody really big and their gi opens up and it's like it's like a black hole.
Tried Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu a number of years ago for about a year and a half. And it was a lot of fun, but it was I had a number of injuries. So
That's the biggest problem with it. People are like, "Oh, is it safe?" I'm like, "No." You know,
it
it,
was
it's
fun.
just it's great. I love it, but
A
it's
lot of
just
fun.
not
I really
necessarily
liked
safe.
it. You know, people kept saying like, I was able to train through some of the injuries, and people were like, "Why are you going back?" I'm like, "Well, I really like it." Like,
It's so true. So, what do you guys do specifically? Do you have anything that you found like really helps with cultivating or developing patience, maybe in yourselves or potentially with your students?
hmm, cultivating it and developing it. And in myself, it's just, I mean, I my training in my whole life, my spiritual practice,
Yeah.
all of my practices that I do is a cultivation of patience and other things like that. As far as in the dojo,
Well, Nikyo, wrist locks.
wrist locks, yeah,
There's a
being
lot
able
of
to
things which are
that,
are, are painful,
yeah.
and the nature is you have to learn tolerance and not.
Mhm.
If you want to escape or counter the other person, you don't go away from it. You go into it,
Yes.
and you experience
Yes.
the pain fully. You go into it, and then you can come back out the other side. So being willing to accept discomfort is actually the solution to the discomfort.
Yes.
Yes.
That's the design of the art
Yes.
to
Yeah,
do.
no, that's really it's so a long time ago, Tom Myers, he wrote that book like Anatomy Trains. It's all about fascia. He said something about he was talking about like rolfing and stuff and
Mhm.
release. He said basically that pain is sensation paired with a motor impulse to move away from it.
Right.
So if you have pain, like what we think of as pain is always you're going to have this sensation and then you're trying to get away from it. So anything if you try any sensation if you try to get away from it becomes painful. And any sensation if you stop that motor impulse to move away from it ceases to be registered as pain. So I
Mhm.
think that's like really important in martial arts, what you were saying about not backing up. In any jujitsu, right? Anything derived from jujitsu, which like Aikido is like, it's derived from Daito Ryuaki Jujutsu. you're looking at this circular movement. And in order to do that circular movement, you can't break the point of contact and move away from the person. So if they're applying, like a Nikio or a Kotomawash, right? If you move away from it, then you're actually going to give them space to come into you, knock you down, do whatever to you. You have to complete the circle and go with it.
Yeah, and in like a randori that we do, if you have maybe three people attacking you, you can't run, right? You there's nowhere to run. You're in a room, so you have to go into it. You have to use circular movements. You have to use, you have to be able to, like you're saying, go into the discomfort. There's no place to run.
That's two good examples. So the one being like the in the counters, right? Like of any movement, we can look for this patience. But then also, it's interesting because you would think like having three people attacking you would stir you up a lot, but that's a perfect opportunity to practice mentally slowing down. Is
Yeah,
that part of why that's done? Is a way to increase the pressure and the intensity
it's
of
pressure,
the
it's
of the
pressure
randori? Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, from what she's saying, if you have three people attacking you, and your first act is to chase them down, and then they're like, "What's going on?" And then you go and you attack one and move one into the other, and you start moving everything around. They can't all come down, but if you're holding and you're waiting for them, they all converge on you in one location. But when you
Yes.
go to the middle and go through it, and very quickly. So well, that's just to give a little bit more clarity of what she was saying.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, with the
Yeah.
kids, we call it push tag. We don't call it multiple attack or whatever, but
Yeah.
it's an interesting, like, theoretical thing, because you can't stop, like you can't just stand still because they'll keep coming at you. You can't run because they'll outrun you. So you have to sort of take control of the chaos,
Yeah.
through using the
That's what
techniques.
randori means,
Yeah, yeah.
seizing
There you
chaos. Yeah.
go.
I
Yeah.
actually, I actually made a similar game for the kids where I had them kind of get like in this sort of like Tagatana position, and they would just run at the other. There would be groups of three, and one kid would just run at the other kid, and all they had to do was kind of like sidestep, or
Right.
Yeah.
like if they could get two hands on that and move it to the side, and then the next kid was supposed to immediately and kind of a
Right.
similar. Is that kind of what you guys were doing with the push tag, or you just have them do a two-handed push? How would that work?
Break it
Two-handed,
down.
and then this is a kokyo position, and then they turn. So they're
Got it.
turning, you can see around the whole area, and then look for the next guy. So if you just stand and you go here, you don't know what's going behind you. But if you turn and do a 360, you know where everybody is all the time.
Ah, it's a cool one.
Yeah.
I like that one. Were there
Yeah.
any, what was, there was another game you guys mentioned earlier that I was really curious about. You said there was a focus game or a concentration game.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, well there's a few.
Maybe you could share some of those.
There's Ninja Sneak Attack. That didn't you invent that? Did you
I
invent
might have, I don't know.
it?
I was thinking
Yeah.
about toga.
Toga. Yeah, well, I learned that when I taught yoga. I did a training on yoga for teaching adaptive yoga, and you spread pom poms out all over the floor, and then you have like a bucket, and so the kids have to use their toes to pick
Yeah,
up the
yeah,
pom poms and put them in the bucket, which takes almost everyone we've ever tried that with. They focus, like laser sharp focus on that. Everybody gets quiet.
yeah,
It
yeah, yeah.
requires like a lot of focus, but
Yeah,
Ninja
yeah.
Sneak Attack is,
That's one that's like particularly for children with sensory integration issues.
Hmm.
It's like red light, green light, one, two, three. Somebody's against the wall, but they
right.
don't say anything. They have to listen. The other people who are approaching are using knee walking. We call it shiko or sori walk.
Yep.
So they're knee walking forward. As soon as they hear, they turn around and look. So if you're going forward, you have to go. You want to go fast, but you have to be careful and be able to stop. So you go forward, then you see them turn, you stop. They don't see you moving forward, then you can keep going. But if they see you moving forward, they point you, and you have to go back.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. I have actually played that game before. That's so funny.
You
I
do?
yeah, I don't know that we called it Ninja Sneak Attack, but I played that exact game.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Do you set up obstacles for them to hide behind ever?
oh,
that's a good
that's a
idea.
good
Because we
idea.
had obstacles so that like if you got to a certain point in the room, you could lay down and then they wouldn't see you and you wouldn't get out, you know?
We don't know we have obstacles in our dojo, but we could
The
try
bolsters.
the
The
bolster.
yoga
Yeah, it
bolsters.
was like a kickboxing gym, so we had those like Wave
Yeah,
Master Taekwondo bags. So, we would lay those down.
Yeah.
But that's a great one. I really like that. Um, since we're like kind of winding down on time, I guess a good final question for you guys, kind of a hard one. Like, was there anything in your life or your Aikido practice or a particular student, and you don't have to say what the thing was, but like that made you completely rethink, what you were doing with your Aikido, and you were like, hey, I gotta like restructure this, or even something that just put a big, forced you to change direction and sort of adapt to your practice. Did you guys have any experience like that with something, or did you find that the tradition kind of like shepherded you pretty well through the process?
Um, for
What do you?
me, 'cause, during like the in 2020, the COVID years, when things we live in New York and
Yeah,
we couldn't train really for quite a while, and we were training, like we were doing online training and we were trying to train weapons outside, but it was very difficult, and I actually stopped training for about a year,
yeah,
because I just found it like hard. Like it was sad, it was
yeah, yeah,
it was
totally.
very hard to train in that way when I wanted to train the other way, so I stopped for a year, and you'll never know how much something means to you and how much it does until you stop doing it, because after, that year was just like, I just saw all the value of the practice, like almost like it was just laid bare, like this is what this practice does for you.
Yeah,
And then when I went back, I think it was like in
2022.
2022,
Yeah.
whenever things were allowed to just be free and unobstructed, I went back, and it's like Aikido, like you could just feel it, like putting me back together from, all the things that happened over the prior 2 years. It was like it literally built up my whole system again,
yeah.
physically, spiritually, mentally, and I was like, this is like, wow, now, I mean, like I knew why I did Aikido before that, but like now I really know why I do Aikido. And I know that, I know why, other people would benefit from it too, because I saw from the inside, how it really can build you back up after you've come down, so for me, that was pretty profound, you know, and changed the way that I looked at it, because I just have so much confidence in what it that it can actually do what it promises to do, because it's happened.
Yeah, that's a cool experience. It makes sense that like you feel like when it's not there, and then you realize, oh man, this is like really a huge part of what I was loving.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that COVID was so tough for so many, not just martial arts, but yoga and a lot of different people in this space. Is just really, really brutal because they just couldn't. So much of it is community and human to human contact and getting in the
Mhm.
same room with people and sort of like the exchange of energy that happens. And if you're
Yeah.
really dedicated and really nerdy about this stuff, you can do a Zoom lesson and enjoy it, but it's not the same.
Yeah, it was really hard when that stopped, and I just think that sort of I think for healing from anything, right? Any disruption in life, whether it's divorce or like whatever you have going on, Aikido, I have been shown, through my own experience, can actually really help, put you back together in a balanced way. It actually has
Yeah.
the power to do that. So, sorry about my cat.
No, that's totally okay. We have a third guest on the podcast, everyone.
Yeah,
That's good. Yeah.
but that was my. What do you have any
Yeah.
yours?
Me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess for me, I mean, I started training martial arts when I was a kid. I was just growing up, living the regular American life, so to speak. And you want to be a good person. You train in martial arts. You investigate things a little bit. You go out and you make a lot of money. You have a family. And blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
And then I found myself sitting in a doctor's office when he said, I don't think I'm going to be able to see you in 6 months because I don't think you'll be here in 6 months. You might want to not be here sooner than that. That's up to you. But in 6 months, probably that's about it. And I sat back and I said, well, I don't even really know for myself what life is supposed to be about. And I'm already talking about losing it. And I realized that what I grew up with didn't work. And
Yeah.
so I was training in martial arts because I was trying to examine, a meditative tradition. And I found something in Buddhism when I was 15, but it was not for me at the time. So I went and just trained in martial arts, and it was like a call. You got to go back and study meditation, and really go into it and use it to change your infrastructure. So then
Yeah.
when I was approaching martial arts, I was approaching it as a meditator rather than this is a thing you do a little examination on the side and then go off and live your life. So
Yes.
that changed my course and was a very healthy experience.
So you felt like you had to become like like the martial arts creature as opposed to just having it be something that you do. And then meditation was the thing that was going to do that for you.
And that became its core, and then with that being the core, then everything took a very positive bent, direction in my life, and everything started working together better. When I wasn't able to handle what was thrown at me at that time, and that helped me pull it back together again.
Yeah, I think meditation can be so powerful. It's interesting because recently I've heard more and more about, people struggling with like adverse experiences during meditation practice or retreats, like, but w from so many people that I know that practice, and obviously that's, a bit anecdotal, there's just so much benefit, and it really can help you to give you some core mental skills that you can use in so many other areas. And then if you have a somatic practice like Aikido or Tai Chi or something like that, that's slow and mindful, or not even necessarily slow, but just where the emphasis is on developing the mindfulness in addition to certain physical qualities,
Yeah.
that can become another vehicle for that. And for me, like even when I've been on retreat, you can just only sit so long, and then it's really beneficial. It's really productive to get up and do walking meditation. And then when I would start structuring my own retreats, and I was just like, oh, I have some time, let me practice extra, that I would like do shorter bouts of sitting, like 20 minutes of sitting and then 20 minutes of walking and get much better results, like have a really good 20 minutes of sitting and then go walk, have a good 20 minutes of walking and go back to sitting. You accumulate the same amount of time, but when you go back and forth, it can be a lot easier.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much. This has been a great time. I mean, really appreciate you coming on and doing this and
Thank
answering all my
you.
you
questions.
too.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
really
it's very
fascinating. Thank you so
educational.
much for having us
Yeah.
on.
Yeah, hopefully sometime I can come out and train with you. Unfortunately, I'm always teaching when other people have classes. I teach like 7 days a week, so I
Yeah,
always want to
that's so
go visit people, and then I'm like, oh yeah, like I have three
Where
classes. I live in Greenwich, but I teach in Portchester, so it's
oh,
not
great.
too far. I grew up in Chappaqua, so I know
Yeah,
Oh, I
the
didn't know
area.
that. Oh, wow, you're like
you're
local.
local.
You're
Yeah,
local.
yeah,
That's so cool.
yeah.
Well,
Well,
good
thank you guys so much.
Yeah.
luck. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.